In part 2 of our interview, what is your superpower? How do you brand yourself? Barbara's going to give us some helpful advice that will take your career to the next level. I'm Shay Holland.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how your journey in hosting just for a minute?
I was doing Slime Across America for Nickelodeon, which was their summer, which was awesome. And they came back to me and said, okay, we love our hosts. We love the people you found. Can you teach them how to be on TV? And then that started to evolve into the coaching side. And now that's sort of exploded too, because everybody has to be good on TV, right? Not just hosts, right? It's like job interviews, everybody. I even go to meetings where I'm pitching and I have to be streaming to other cities and creating content. So anyway, here we are. So still done tons in home shopping. I consult with the digital network Cheddar, which is a financial news network, finance and media and tech. I work with Peloton. I work with still lots of companies in the lifestyle space, news and advising. So it's still all the intersections.
It's an amazing journey. I feel like you've climbed this mountain and you get to come down the other side of it and see all the changes that have taken place in the landscape.
Absolutely.
Tell us, yeah, what would be the biggest difference you would say between the time you started and now in terms of, obviously we have these platforms like IG Live where people can create their own things. And I think your signal might lock up here for a second. I'm seeing little circles going around.
Are we back?
Okay, we're back. Yes.
Yay. Okay. Okay. So digital technology happened, which was just extraordinary. But there are a bunch of different things that happened. I actually sometimes check in with this. One, I give total credit to MTV. Completely changed the culture. Because MTV did something, which I talk about all the time, and still nobody picks up on this. So MTV only used bullet points in their teleprompters. They didn't ever have full scripts. And so that allowed and forced the VJs to string together the information, which made them sound conversational. And that's when the notion of sounding conversational started to enter into literally the conversation. So that changes, right? Exactly. Like it changes communication completely, because everything else up to that had been like much more structured and newsy. And suddenly it was like, that's where we're all going to be. And things became a lot more casual. Back then, and anybody who's been around would know this, it was so much more about fitting in, which I talk about a lot. So if you looked a certain way, I sometimes joke about it was like the American Girl doll store. If you looked a certain way and you could read a teleprompter, you could be a host. And only those people could be hosts, right? It was very much like everybody looks the same,
so true,
the same, sounds the same. It was all about fitting in. Now everything is about standing out, because there's so much content and so many different platforms and there's so much clutter. It's not about fitting in, it's all about standing out. And so we do that all the time as exercises, like how do you fit in? You meet the criteria, you have the skills, you can do that. But at the same time, you have to really focus on then what are my superpowers, or what's my unique selling proposition? How do I stand out in those spaces? And you always want to maximize that. So that is that's just like a change. And then to your point though, the technology, because even though it's overwhelming, to me it's still extraordinary that any of us have access. Because before, I was a gatekeeper. Like, I was one of a handful of people who decided who could get on TV. Now everyone can be on TV. Because if we plug this into my television, we're all on TV. This is IGTV. There's no, and I brought that up. I too remember when we did a thing, was it last year, 2019? Because to remind people because sometimes people think like digital is still somehow less than. It's all digital. It's not like it all is. Got to figure out how you want to make money in any of these places, but it is all TV, and anybody can get on Instagram, anybody can get on YouTube, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's the making money part that a lot of us still struggle with, because, it's just, it hasn't caught up to where obviously the networks have financially. So hopefully that'll be the next iteration. Is that the word for the business? Now, Barbara, you say one of your quotes is, "Why fit in when you were made to stand out?" And you just got on that just a little bit. But I think, especially for newer hosts, it's that intersection of branding and standing out that still seems so overwhelming oftentimes. When you're coaching somebody or working with them, what is some of the thought process or some of the questions you're asking them to help them figure out how to stand out?
Well, one, on a very practical level, it's actually sometimes even asking your family and friends, because often the things that make you stand out are things that you do so naturally well that you don't even notice them. And a lot of times they can be, and this is where I get very serious about the importance of soft skills as opposed to hard skills, because it's really hard to quantify what makes somebody like such an amazing prompter reader versus somebody else. So sometimes it's like being a great colleague is a way to stand out. Sometimes it's because you have a really good Rolodex. Sometimes because you're a good listener. You know, things like I make everybody around me look better, right? I lift all boats. I'm a great team member. Those are ways to stand out. So it's like I don't want anybody to ever sort of like undersell or whatever. Those things are really important, especially on travel shows and things I've worked on. When we're sitting getting down to the list, questions will come up like, would I want to be in a van with this person for 13 weeks? When you get down to like, one of these last 5 or 6 people could do this, it gets into that. Like, can I imagine this person, right? Like, are they... So stuff like that really does come up. And I only say that is just because I think that those are things that anybody could tap into.
Definitely.
When you go back to the overwhelm, that's what I totally get it. It's constantly to remind people that, to anybody. So because there's comfort in being like in the crowd, right? And kind of not standing out, especially when you're new. And that's okay. You're going to dip your toes. But you're kind of stuck in the messy middle. So it feels emotionally safe. But in fact, it's not safe because now you're just stuck. So there's a little cognitive dissonance. So the point is you don't have to go, it's not a 180. I think sometimes we hear it's like, if I'm not going to fit in, I need to stand out and you need to be like way extremely radically wild. No. So all you want to do is just skirt the edges. You really close, just like moving over towards so that you can stand out a little bit. You don't have to stand out a ton. And you could if you're like, woo. But for a lot of us, it's just sort of tapping into those little extras, like what's your secret sauce? Yeah. What makes you you? So it's just sort of kind of imagining if it's a circle and everybody's mushed in the thing, you want to be towards the edge.
Interesting, because you said it at the beginning of that answer that sometimes we need to ask other people, what are the things that you see in us? Like even this audition I had today, I didn't realize one of the things I have is considered kind of a skill that people are going to want, which is just, I can swing a hammer like nobody's business. I can use any power tool. And I'm thinking, doesn't everybody do that? If you've ever lived anywhere by yourself, you've got to hang your own pictures. Well, I guess I wasn't born with the silver shoe, so I do. And I never considered that a special skill. So literally, it's sometimes the things that we're taking so much for granted that we do every day that we just have to sit down and almost create a journal of your day, over a week. And look at what you do that you might not realize is a special skill in this business.
Okay, how much do I love that? And Sean, again, he and I can attest, like we loved the old school day when we actually used to get headshots, like actual hard copies, and they were big. Because we read the special skills sections like you would not believe. So take that seriously. To your point, and like we'll actually, and then also that's another thing too to remember. When you have skills that you normally wouldn't think were relevant here, your agent or you may not even know that that is something that could get you a job in a certain situation. So you either want to bring it up or understand. But I love that.
My younger colleagues are saying they use the Velcro or the command strips. We didn't have them when I was in college, okay? So, Barbara, I also wanted to ask you with some of the hosts, the stars that you've coached, we saw that, like, for example, Tyra Banks is now getting ready to host, be the new host of Dancing with the Stars. It almost seems like we're not having a lot of change in the faces, though, at the big levels. And I don't know how that makes how do we account for that? She was doing America's Next Top Model, and you see these celebrities who are now getting these hosting jobs. We even saw that at Democratic National Convention. There wasn't a single host. It was all actors. So how do we compete when we're not famous and we don't have, this big name and we don't look like Tyra Banks?
That is, I think, something that's not going to go away. So we look at other ways of building our brands and our skills. So because it's so cluttered and everybody's risk averse and it is so hard to get eyeballs. So, and by the way, and Tyra is awesome. And I love her as a case study. So, because I first met her when I was at VH1, it was even before she got her Sports Illustrated cover, because she was the first Black woman on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And, she actually said to me, like, I'm going to be the next Oprah, which was, at that point, I was like, if I had $1 for every single person, I don't know, I'm flying first class. Right. She did it. My point is she was strategic. She put in the work. She got in the training. She developed the relationships. She took meetings with everyone. She asked all the right questions. Tyra is where she is for a reason. It was never an accident. It's not based on the fact that yes, she's a beautiful woman, but I gotta say, behind the scenes, like she delivers, and she's maintained these relationships for decades, and she's an incredibly hard worker, and she understands how all the pieces of the puzzle fit in, and she understands how to deliver it. So to me, like, she becomes a great case study. You know, I also look at somebody like Chrissy Teigen. So when I first started working with Chrissy, like, she did everything. Like, she trained so hard. Nobody even knows this. Like, she did a week of like Good Morning Albany to practice, you know, in a low risk situation doing live television. So it's like, so a lot of people have sustained really amazing careers over a long period of time. It's because they really put in the work. And then by the time things happen, they've been doing it for so long, it makes it look easy. You know,
Barbie, you froze up just a little bit there again. So, but you're back.
Sorry, my phone is on low power. So hang on a sec.
Barbara, where are you moving to? Are you staying in Brooklyn, or are you coming our way?
Okay, it's one of my dreams to come your way. It's like I really want to spend more time in LA. Okay, I'm moving a block from where I live. It's just such a New York story. This is what we all do.
Right.
But to answer your question, another person I would say, because I think this is fascinating, is Snooki, you know, from Jersey Shore. She works consistently. You know why? Because she's off camera. She really delivers. Do you know what I mean? She's a pro. She shows up on time, prepared, does the work. So there's a difference between her public-facing persona and her professional behind-the-scenes persona. And that's another thing for everyone to consider. So I just meant, like, so when you see somebody who's been sustaining a career, ask yourself, wow, that's impressive. What are the things that they've been doing? What are things I can be doing to, like, you know, keep building, developing relationships, getting better? But to your question, it is really tricky in terms of, you know, the celebrities. That's the reason why there's so many reboots, because those projects already have familiarity and, you know, viewer awareness, which makes me sad, because it means there are fewer original ideas. Everybody's just going back to their vault saying, how can we revive what we already have?
Yeah, that's so true. So we did have a little bit of tech difficulties there. You guys give us some hearts or something if they've been resolved. Barbara had to put her charger in there, so I think we're okay
so sorry,
now.
I'm tipping stuff over.
That's okay. Oh, it was probably, take a minute and do that. Digital is also a great space for hosts to work in. Yes, that is so true. Thank you. And also, I know it's probably late your time, so we appreciate you taking the time. Our group loves to have kind of a little bit of an evening hangout, but it's a lot easier for us to.
No, I totally get it. It's just, and I do a family Zoom 3 times a week, and all my family's on the West Coast, so I'm always in this perpetual late. I'm sorry about now it's tipping over.
I just bought, I'm not going to turn it around. I'm going to do a little video here pretty soon. I get asked so often what my setup looks like. And until last week, it was ghetto with a capital G. I am not kidding. iPhone 6S, books, everything, you name it. And then
I'm totally on the books right now. I got my little tripod on my books.
Yeah. And I'm like, I am stressing myself out so much. I just need to sit down, make a list of what I want and research it, invest. And so I got my light. I got this little tripod for the stand. Just having this little tripod to put the camera on has made such a world of difference instead of the books holding it up.
Wherever I travel, I always have an iPhone tripod now, always, because even for family calls, it makes such a difference. But funny enough, to your point, because I feel like everybody needs to do this. I can't tell you how much my home studio setup is a consideration for me in the new apartment.
Yeah,
we should be moving in about a month. We were supposed to move in April. I've been in boxes since February. Like, I've spent the entire pandemic. Anyway.
Oh, Barbara. Oh.
But I meant, like, so it's like I can't practice what I preach, is meaning, like, there's no place in my apartment that's actually decent for this. But you're kidding. It's like I've already, like, bought the screen and the backdrops and, like, the extra light. I'm like, yeah. So I'm with you.
It's so true. I mean, and we all need it now. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I just got a message from a friend. You know, she's teaching virtually. So whether you're a teacher or whether you're a host, basically we are all becoming hosts now, which is a great thing for us in the business. But it makes it, you know, much more competitive. But we should have that leg up and that advantage in the tech, and sometimes we don't.
You do, though. And then so that actually brings up a great point about looking for opportunities in the corporate space, and so for some people it doesn't seem as glamorous because it's not consumer facing, but it's paid, right? A lot of people can really make a living that way. And and in the industrial and infomercial space where you are hosting content all the time. It's just not consumer facing. The same thing too, I was really fascinated to discover how much content is existing that's internal at giant companies. Like
Yes.
There's a podcast company called Big Heads who they just produce podcasts for internally for giant companies that do, which I just think is remarkable. But like Google has internal content.
Yeah,
Yahoo
that's how I
has
make my survival dollars is industrial. We call them industrials in the business, and it's just doing corporate videos. And companies like Gap, for example, one of them I did was their sexual harassment training was all done via video, and I was the host of those videos. And I got to ask people like, "So where did you touch her?"
You did that so well. That was really good.
I do. I come across as non-threatening, but I'm definitely going to go for the jugular because I am a crime reporter. At some point, just not with you. But just watch out. I feel like I've got my Batman wings on with this dress too. I went and got a couple of pieces, but I didn't realize this is the first time I've worn this on camera, and the shoulders are these fancy Batman wings.
There's texture and it's interesting.
That's why I bought it. I can't tell though if I look like is it the 80s when we had the shoulder pads that went out to like way out there?
No, it doesn't. No, you're definitely, you're not looking like Dynasty or anything. Don't worry. It looks really
okay.
Nice.
Phew. Barbara, is there anything that I should ask you before I open it up to a couple of questions that you really wanted to touch on as we have you tonight?
One of the things I wanted, because I was thinking about this conversation, one day I'm going to type this up in a blog with Elizabeth Wagmeister, but two things she taught me that were really great. One was, because she's amazing at developing relationships and maintaining those relationships for years, but she reminded me, it's like when she had, one of the ways she got to where she was is like in her early jobs, she was very open about her ambitions, but she was what I'm trying to get is she was always reminded to be really good at the job that you have. And that happens a lot with hosts, reporters, anybody. When you're it's great to be ambitious and hungry and want to do it, but you get so focused on the thing that you want that you forget about being awesome at the job you've been hired to do. Right?
So good. Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought that was a fantastic reminder. It's like, you've got to cover your boss, whoever that is, whether that's another host or that's a producer or an executive producer. So you know what I mean? If like you're a junior person, you're going to go on red carpets. It's like, go rock that, but don't forget, it's like you have to make your boss look good because that's how more opportunities are going to come. So that's just a really important thing to remember in the long term, because those are people who continue to hire you. And here was also an amazing tip that Elizabeth brought up, and also J.D. Durkin taught me from Cheddar, was if you want to practice how to do interviews and be really, really good, go find interviewers, anybody who you think is amazing at the top of their game, and start transcribing the interviews. Really take the time. It's very time consuming, but that's when you start to really learn about pacing, timing, inflection points, the follow-up, all of that. And I just think that's incredibly valuable information, because that's something anybody could be doing right now, right? Like while there's downtime, those are things you don't think about doing. Same thing going back and watching content that you write. Like I recommend to people sometimes watching with the sound off and watching the body language and the facial expressions of people who are really, really great hosts. How are they showing up? How's their energy coming across when you can't even hear them speak? So really take advantage, and that costs you no money. Like that's just all available on YouTube.
In the final segment of this series, Barbara shares 4 strategies to create your own content and leave your mark on the world. It's a dynamic conversation you're not going to want to miss. I'm Shay Holland. Find us on Instagram at Hosts in LA.